So thanks to one cancellation by my good self and another cancellation by the university administration, technically because of swine flu is what it says on the academic calendar. I'm not sure what that meant. We are now a little bit kind of out of schedule in terms of the course, but also in terms of what you must be doing for me. We prepared a kind of scheme at the start, so I've looked at that and I've come up with a revised version which you can see up there, which I think is both reasonable for you up to a point, but also reasonable in terms of what I can and cannot do. So just behind Zaynep, let me push it up slightly higher, you can see what I'm now proposing. So by, and this is the deadline in a sense for that, but if you finish earlier, you can give it earlier to me, but by our class on Tuesday the 22nd of December, I would like to have a draft paper from all of you, okay? Now, I would like this to be relatively finished, but obviously I'm going to give you about 3 more weeks to finish it off, so it doesn't have to be completely complete. Now, I know that's giving you about 3 weeks, so it's not a long time to write something that you will be kind of very happy with. So prepare something which is representative of what you're planning to give me in the end. Okay, you can have certain sections missed out and so on. We can discuss those. So by Tuesday 22nd, let me have whatever we might call a draft paper of some sort, okay, which, as I said, represents more or less what you're planning to say, and then I can give you some feedback in order to spot serious problems so that you can avert those problems for the final one or whatever. Then the very final deadline for the final paper will be the 11th of January. I say this because Friday the 15th of January is the last day of grades, and obviously with, I don't know how many, 9 or 10 of you in the class, I obviously need a few days with all my other important things I have to do, I need a few days in which to have time to read your papers properly and to give you a fair grade and then calculate the final grade for the whole course, which takes your presentations and participation and things into consideration. So that's giving me kind of 4 or 5 days, I suppose. If everyone gave their essays to me on like the 15th, or 14th even, then I obviously wouldn't have time. So I'm trying to give you as long as possible, but obviously it has to be reasonable to me as well. I need a little bit of time. And these are the dates according to the revised calendar. You know, the administration has changed, pushed everything back because they cancelled classes last week for a couple of days. So 22nd of December, which is a few days before Christmas, I see, draft paper, and then at the very latest, 11th of January, I need to see your final paper. You can send them by email, you can push them under my door, you can bring them to the library in any form as long as I get hold of them by that point. If you want to have an incomplete, if you want to have an I grade, then I'm willing to do that, okay? But I must add that the last time I taught this course, and the first time, which is last year or 2 years ago, I gave an incomplete option to one student, and I found out afterwards from instructors who know him that he's not very good at meeting deadlines, and he missed the deadline and ended up with an F. Okay, though he was a very bright student, but he obviously couldn't get his act together to get the paper ready, and the fact that he had an incomplete didn't put enough pressure on him. So I'll give you an incomplete, but we do need within a week or 10 days of the 15th of January, I do need to see a final paper. Otherwise, it automatically becomes F, and then obviously we've either got to do some administrative stuff to sort it out, and I'd rather we didn't do that. Okay, any questions? Does that seem reasonable? Fair enough? Now, Cengiz, I know you've got kind of certain plans. You'll just get it in at some point. Yeah. Yeah, okay, well, whenever you've got something to give me, you can give me, and then if I've got time to give you some feedback, we can sort that out together. And so, anyone else? I mean, again, ladies, I don't know when you're departing for home and things like that. We discussed this a while back, but do you have any plan? Sorry? Okay, so you're here until January. Okay, so that's okay. So this fits in with you, but you can, if there is a problem or something, you can let me know, okay? And for all of you, okay, if you have any problem, the best thing is to send me a mail and say, David, blah, 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 can you help? Rather than leave it to the last minute, in which case, obviously, maybe I can't help, okay? I want you all to do good papers, which is why we're doing the draft, so I can help you with it. And secondly, obviously, I'm willing to help if you've got any problems. So, okay, Tamama? Okay, right. So I think what we'll do now is we'll talk about medieval charters. Do you have the document I gave out last time? Do we have this? If you don't, in anticipation of the negative answer, I have, maybe not enough for everyone, but I have a number of copies here. So Cengiz, you've got one. Maybe ladies, you can share over here. We might have enough. Okay, you pass 2 back, and then we actually do have enough. All right. So my next question is, did anyone have a chance to read this one side since over the past 3 weeks at all? Anyone had a read of these things? We were due to have this discussion before the Bayram, so... Yik yak yok, as you all say. Okay, let me take you through the wonderful world of medieval charters. Let's see if I can put this up. And maybe see if there's enough of these just to help us along. Take one and pass it along. How legible that is. Okay. What you've got in front of you are 3 examples taken from a website of charters or generally something which we sometimes call deeds, which literally, I guess, means something which is done, which has been done, a deed, something which has been achieved or done. So it's a record of something. Let's read the second one, B. I'll just read through this and then ask a few questions. May it be made known to all sons of the Holy Mother Church, both present and future, that I, William Peveril, grant and confirm the gift which Walter de Strethely and his sons gave to God and to the Church of St. Mary of Garendon, that is 13 bovates of land in Costock, 6.5 in pure alms and 6.5 in fee farm for 5 shillings yearly, as their chirograph is witness. By these witnesses, William, and then there's a list of names, we won't read all of those out. That's a fairly short and simple charter grant. What is it doing? What was that little document there seeking to achieve? We'll go through briefly and analyze the individual parts in a few minutes, but firstly we should get clear what this and similar things are about. What is it basically doing? Sorry?
It's making it legal, it's confirming it. I mean, they're giving them the land, but they need to have witnesses.
Okay. Well, what I wanted, the first bit of the answer was a simple one, giving land. Okay. Deeds of one sort or another are about giving or conveying property or property rights, access to property. It may not mean physically the property, but the right, the legal right use and access that property, okay? From one person, sometimes called the donor, to someone else, someone called the beneficiary. And the donor may be a couple of people, okay, but usually one, and the beneficiary may be a person, but also it can be a church, an institution, a group of people collected together and so on. But basically A to B, okay, in giving this. So in the example, the short example B that we just read, who is the donor? William Peveril, okay, and who is the beneficiary? Who is the second party? The Church of St. Mary of Garendon, okay. It says to God, obviously, but they all say Deo, to God, and then they actually mean, in the cases of religious donations, they mention the church or the monks or whoever it is in their name. Okay, so it's one of a number of ways of passing on from one person, yourself, the donor, to someone else, other people, property or property rights, okay, in this direction. And you may or may not get something in return. Okay, there is ultimately no such thing as a free lunch, as they say. Someone wants something in return. And quite a lot of these things appear as if they're just giving, but they're expecting some things in return. If we looked at this little charter, if we looked at the longer A and B in detail, we would see a number of recurring elements. So the second sheet that I gave you, which I passed out, which we've got up here as well, indicates some of the elements in charters and similar documents that we see over time, and we'll come to this list in a minute. So if you read lots of charters, and I've copied lots of them for my research over the years, you find that they have a recurring structure, okay, a recurring element, and the same words and phrases are used, so it's quite easy to see where they're going, and then you look for the important parts, okay. So they begin with some kind of a introduction or notification. May it be made known to all hearing and seeing these letters. Okay, that's one example there, which is from A. We've got A here. Similar thing in B. May it be made known to all sons of the Holy Church, and so on, both present and future. And then in C, know all men present and to come, okay, which means future. Some sort of greeting or starting. Then usually at that point, we get the reference to the first party, the donor. Okay, here, William Peveril, but adding this extra thing, which you don't always get, that his heirs, his relatives, have consented. Why would they add that in, do you think? I, William Peveril, with the consent and advice and well-wishing of William, my son and heir, and all the rest of my friends and men, why might that be added in, do you think? This is something which recurs in one way or another in other documents, other kinds of documents.
Some state object to this.
Yeah, okay. In any transaction, medieval or modern, you've always got the danger that someone might make a claim against it, okay, and have a legal base for their claim. So in the Middle Ages, they tried various ways to support the donation, okay, and this isn't a big one, but it's saying that my son William is consenting, is agreeing to this, okay. So in theory, he's agreed to this donation or whatever it is, and so he's not going to argue with it in a sense. So that's one possible explanation. Then we have the action, which is the kind of thing which is done. Have granted and given by firm gift. Okay, so this is a grant, a literal giving away. Over here, you see different kinds of deed. Not all of them we could call charters, and classified according to the notification. But the action is the important thing here. Okay, a gift, have given, granted, and by this present charter confirmed. That's basically similar to what we've got here. Quit claim, to remise, relax, and quit claim. That is, in a quit claim, someone is saying, I quit any claim to this. Okay, I cease to make any claim to this property, in a sense, okay, and others who are party to this as well. And that will have a different kind of introduction, and these different verbs being used here to indicate the action. A lease or indenture, okay, is, again, there's the Latin, but concede and leased. That's giving the rights to someone else, not necessarily the property, but the rights. It's like renting out, in a sense. You still use the word lease today. And a fine, now this is a very interesting concept, in fact. The technical word is finalis concordia, final agreement, final concord. What happened is that, again, people were a bit uncertain about how legally strong the giving was. Okay, I've given my pen to Chara, but we're worried that his family and descendants might say, no, we want, my family and descendants will say, no, we want that pen back. And he might say, well, I've got this charter or something, and people say, no, we still have a legal claim to this, or whatever. There's a series of concerns. So what we get is they make a kind of false court case, okay, where between Chara and me about the pen, or about land, normally. And the court then pretends to look into our disagreement and find a conclusion in his favor to say he has the pen. And then we make a final agreement in the court about that, okay? We have a final agreement about this. And then they prepare a document which is called the final concord, okay, which is everything here. And they write it out once, and they give it to Chara. They write it out again, and they give it to me. And then they write it out again here, and this is called the foot. And the court keeps that. So there are now 3 copies. And they cut them across in this kind of wavy kind of way so that they will then only fit together the original ones. And these are often lost, but copies of the feet are recorded in the court records, so there's actually a court record. So if anyone challenges it, if my family says, no, that pen belongs to David, then they can even go to the court records and that will support what's going on. So it seems like a ridiculously complicated process just to protect the pen. But in different times, obviously, they have to think about these things in different ways. So there are different kinds of giving. Literally giving to someone forever, giving them in return for some kind of a payment, okay, giving the rights, leasing the rights to something. He's allowed to use that pen, but after 10 years, he's got to give it back to me, okay, something like that. And he might pay me a little bit of money every so often, and so on. So these actions, the different kind of conveyance are indicated by different words, and that's very important then. We understand the nature of what's going on. In this case, they don't always have this. If you're giving it to a religious place, the Church of St. Mary of Garendon, as we've got here, then you give it in free alms, pure and perpetual alms, forever. There's no expectation of any payment or something in return. But, as we said, there's no such thing as a free lunch. You're expecting the monks maybe to pray for your soul on a regular basis, things like that. So not monetary payment, but some kind of religious one. Pro salute, for the salvation usually of my soul and for the soul of my relatives, so on. We've got that. Okay, people are obviously concerned about their soul. It makes it sound as if they're doing things for a nice religious reason. Okay, and particularly if you're giving to a church, you're going to stress this. They'll pray for my soul. Here we finally have the beneficiary in this case. We could put the beneficiary earlier and mention this later on. The church. Then some description of the property. In this case, we have all my land in Costock, which I had in my lordship, that is, which Robert and Godwin and Hamo and their men held with all things to the aforesaid land, belonging us much in water as in pastures and meadows and fields and ways and all places. Okay, so some kind of very broad description. Sometimes it says 13 acres, 10 bovates or whatever it is. Sometimes you get a boundary clause. It'll say going from here round to here, and then there, and they're making it very clear what's being given. It all varies, but some kind of description of, in this case, property. Okay. Tenure, kind of here. Okay. Well, this one, free and quit from all earthly service, so no payment and no return, but we've already had this alms clause, so there's something of a religious return. There's no warranty, no guarantee in this one, but we can have that.
I mean, it almost sounds like indulgences.
Well, okay, the religious ones will sound a bit like that. Many of the charters are not necessarily in free, pure and perpetual alms. They do specify that this church is getting this land, but they're going to pay to me 13 shillings 3 times a year and things. It's a purely economic thing. Okay, but from the perspective of someone who was of a religious inclination in the Middle Ages, obviously having these guys praying for your soul is just as important as receiving money in the long run, because you believe that you've got a chance to go to hell or heaven when you die and so on. So we don't have to see it quite in a kind of paying to save your soul in a sense. It's a kind of tit for tat, quid pro quo thing which is going on up to a point here. And then for historians, often one of the most exciting or interesting bits is the witness list. Of this gift and alms, the witnesses are, and then we have a series of names. We had that in the first case. What's the purpose of this, do you think? Why would we have a witness list?
Just further compares it, potentially challenges it, you can go ask them.
Yeah, exactly. And who might the witnesses be? Who would you choose as witnesses to support the fact that you've given? Sorry?
Prominent people.
Prominent people, perhaps, yeah. I mean, you still need witnesses today. In British and I presume Turkish transactions, you often need someone to sign a document, and you'll choose someone of good standing, but usually someone you know, someone who knows you in that sense as well. Okay. So for historians, these are interesting because they're references to people. We like to find out who people are, but there must be a reason why William Peverell has chosen these guys to be his witnesses. They might be his vassals, they might be his friends, they might be people living near him. Okay, they're not some guy who lives 100 miles away he's never met. They've got to be someone he's got some kind of connection with and that seem important to him. So by studying these lists, you can often build up an impression of the networks that people work with and things like that. Okay, what exactly the relationship is less easy to discover, but it helps you in that sense. Unfortunately, if we don't have the original charters surviving, which in many cases we don't, we have a copy, people copying didn't care about the witness list because these guys may have died 100 years earlier. They're copying them out later on. So then they just say, witnesses, lots of them, and then they leave it blank, or they might copy the first couple of names out and then put etc. or something like that. Okay, then it's gone. And then also at the bottom, as you can see, sometimes, not so much in the very early ones, you get a dating clause. It actually tells you more or less when these things happened. And you may have a seal, a wax seal attached, again, as a way of guaranteeing the originality of these things. Okay, I see we've come to past, so we've got to stop there, unfortunately. But we might be able to carry on a bit about deeds on Thursday when we have Altai's presentation. Also on Thursday, we'll begin looking at the reign of King John. Now, Marta, you're presenting, but you've got this, I think, anyway, but we'll take one anyway. But you'll present next week, okay, not on Thursday.
This one that you gave us.
Yeah, this is the one we've had a version of already, but just in case people lost it like people tend to do, I'm giving it out again. Okay, thank you very much. So see you on Thursday. I shall email our friend Altai and make sure he knows about his presentation for then. Thank you again, Zeynep, for your presentation. And I shall see you all.